we're doing today. I think most of us know this is about updating the guidance we published 18 months ago on 12 fire critical assets. This is more to put, George's little introduction is more about putting it into context with what we've done in the past and the direction we're heading in the future. So at the risk of boring people who've heard it before to death, and in consideration of the people who haven't heard it before because they're new, we're going to play that. It'll be about 10 minutes. And then, so feel free to go and get a coffee or something if you haven't heard this already. But I think we need to make sure everybody's on the same page. Right, Jess, do you want to load that up and play that? It's about 10 minutes, isn't it?
But it's a matter of letting the other people who
we've got a lot of new people,
yeah.
People, as you can understand.
Yeah, so bear with me a second. Right, so basically, just to explain what BIM4Housing is, it's not about 3D modeling, it's about better information management. And essentially what we've done, we've got 6 working groups that look after or that are interested in different aspects of the process. And what we try and do is identify what things could be made easier, what problems could be addressed if we have better information management. And so each of those groups meets twice a year, 6 times a year. So we've got 36 working group meetings each year. And what we then do from those is identify particular tasks that work streams get together and work on for a limited period to come up with better data, standardized data templates, reusable libraries, the 12 the critical components or asset types that we're going through at the moment. We're doing cavity barriers this morning, and then the information about procedures and the like. And just to put it in context, one of the challenges is that you've got different people in different parts of the organizations who are interested in from different perspectives. So depending on what you need to know, it's a matter of everybody's got slightly different information requirements and also different levels of detail. What we're also doing is trying to navigate through all of this information. What information is fixed and what's likely to change. So, for example, for an AOV, there's probably information, or for a cavity barrier, there's information that is static because that's come from the manufacturer, but there might be some specific information about that particular cavity barrier in that location. So if we can differentiate between the two, that would be good. The other thing is that the safety case reports and the fire risk assessments, it's great to know that you've got one, but it could be out of date the following day. So what we really need is a safety management system and a fire management system, fire risk management system that is also live. So the reports are an output that you need to track, but that in itself isn't adequate as far as the building safety side of things is concerned. Because when things change, the risk assessments really should be rerun. And then it's also the case that we find that we want to break out things like fire stopping inspections, for example, to be able to see what's changed or have things. If a problem's been identified under a fire risk assessment, then the works that have been carried out, has that actually been completed? And importantly, finally, it's a matter of tying that inspection, for example, back to an individual asset record and not creating a new one. Because what we've discovered is that when people are using applications, often they're creating a new record for a particular asset, And actually what they're doing is they're just creating the golden thread is just for the inspection, not for the asset. So we're losing the track of the information. So if we've got asset tags, for example, those are tied to a particular asset, and we can then test the information to see if that particular asset has got the additional information that's needed. That can then be tied back to manufacturer's product data, but you also need to look at it in the context of where that door is. So just looking at an inspection without understanding where it is and the spaces that it's protecting isn't really adequate. And then if people are using applications like Plan Radar, Risk-Based, Hilti, Keystone or Civica to be able to identify the individual assets, it all needs to come back to the individual information, because in part we've got so many golden threads now. The success of what we've been doing is good, but what we're actually ending up with, a landlord is ending up having to deal with dozens or potentially hundreds of different golden threads. So we need to be able to bring together that information. Well, finally, the information on machine readable information. We want to be able to, here we've got a data sheet where we're showing fire rating, and really to interpret the fire rating for this particular door, a human's got to read that, or that, or that. You've got fire rating all described in different ways. So what we want to try and do, for example, in this session here, is if there's a data sheet for a cavity barrier, what is the key information that we need to know about that cavity barrier, and can we hold that as machine readable information? Whereas, for example, the acoustic level, that might be just in the data sheet. So the exercise of doing that, we've been on this journey for a couple of years now, and we've been working with HACT to create standardized data templates that can then be used either for existing buildings and new buildings, so that we can organize the information in a way that any software application can then read. And this is the exercise that we went through with the BRE to create standardized data templates. The point about this is that then you've got a standard name for example, a balcony door. We've got a classification for it. We've also got the IFC classification, which is the BIM standard. And by gluing these together, then it makes the job a lot easier to find things and keep them up to date. Also, people use different terms. So it might be an automatic opening vent is described in an asset management system as an AOV or a smoke vent, or automatic air vent. We can do this in the database to be able to have different synonyms. So overall, we've identified 71 fire-related assets and 152 that are safety-related. Now that can change, or it will depend on an interpretation, but at least we're starting to get there. The other thing is about the asset data. So part of what we're trying to do today is to understand what information is unique to cavity barriers that is different than would be for a fire damper. We're doing fire dampers this afternoon. And this is standard COBie, as it's called. And this is generic for any type of asset, manufacturer, model number, etc. The thing that makes it different is the information that you might have for different types of assets. And the most widely delivered at the moment is IFC data, which is in the BIM world. But there's also different information sets. CIBSE, for example, the Chartered Building Service Engineers, they've got a set of information that is needed, and that's what's that's what's influenced FIRE or BS8644. You've also got cost information from RICS, and you've got distribution. This is what wholesalers and builders merchants use, the ETIM classification. So the point is, when we're looking for the right information, it's got to be for the right purpose. This is IFC for an automatic opening vent. And you'll see a lot of these attributes here are probably only needed for design purposes. So my argument now, because I'm on a journey with this as well, but my argument now is probably we can have these just in a data sheet, but things like fire rating and height and width, that's something that perhaps it should be managed going forward as machine readable data. And if we do that, it means it can be collected automatically, or sorry, can be collected without having to put into BIM models. This can be generated for in data templates or spreadsheets for contractors to find. So the big challenge that we've got is the only people that really know what you need for a cavity barrier are people that really understand both the manufacture, the installation, and the maintenance and asset management of cavity barriers. So that's the purpose of today. And the big question that we're trying to answer is, what data do we need? And in most cases, we're told that it depends. It depends on what that cavity barrier is doing, what was its specification, and how is it going to be, what is it, what's responsible for it. So we've gone through this exercise now with AOVs on Monday, fire doors on Tuesday. We did smoke dampers yesterday. But what we're doing is really reviewing the hard work that some of the people that are on this call put in 18 months ago. So what we want to do is refresh that, as Richard's saying, in the context of the Act. And if we can do that, it means that the information that we're capturing can be used in any software application, because we're able to hold the data as a discrete auditable set of information that can then be connected to any software that's got a door. And by doing that, it means that we can then add in the new BS8644 information, for example, into that same library, and then populate any system. So this makes it neutral and generic. So that's really where that's what we're trying to achieve.
Okay, so there you have it. So what I suggest, we'll move straight on to the document. Now this is actually a work in progress, because Sharon McClure has already done some input and made some comments on this. So we're going to use her version as a start off. Jess, do you want to go to question 1? Right. There's an amount of preamble prior to these questions, which obviously will need a bit of revision, but we don't need to worry about that now. Right. So the first question: what risks do fire penetration seals mitigate? What risks do they actually mitigate? If you want to have just a flick through there and see what you think. If there's anything glaringly missing or needs amending, adding to, subtracting to. Anything that stands out to anyone?
There's two items in there about the firefighters access. Can they kind of be combined into one, or is it making
Where is
issue?
that? There's the
third one
one.
down, and then about the
And
middle. So they're both fire brigade firefighters. It's just, it could be covered in one item. It's minor, but
right, yeah. Yes, absolutely. So risk of fire brigade not having access or enough time.
yeah.
That might be two separate things. So
If it's two, then leave it as two. It's just start off then.
Because it's talking about that without the correct fire penetration seals in place, access for firefighting could be
right, yeah,
compromised because of fire spread and creating hazardous situations for the firefighters. The other bit is talking about the reduction in the time to prevent fire spread. So by the time the fire service get there, the fire be more developed than it would be if the penetrations were correct. So it might just be a rewording to ensure that that's what it's trying to capture. Because it's two different elements.
If two are needed, that's fine. I'd say put two things that are similar together in the text. So anything that's firefighter related, group together.
I would
that's fine.
I would also agree with that, because there's a lot of doubling up in these sort of documents. You can look at the first 2 points. The risk of smoke spread and the risk of heat spread is basically the same as the risk of speed of fire and smoke spread, which is 1, 2, 4, 5 or 6 down. And then you got above that the risk of spread of fire, smoke and heat between building compartmentation. Those all 4 can be combined into 1, really, or 2.
Okay, right. You know what? We're not going to go through all of those and do that now. We can do that. I take your point on that, and we'll get that done after the meeting or outside the meeting. We don't need to waste time doing that. I understand what you mean about duplication. Anything else? Just put a note at the bottom in green. Check for duplication.
Can I also ask for clarity on there's 4, 5, 6, 7. A 7th, I think, is down risk of number of uncontained areas. What does that mean?
Risk of what?
Number of uncontained areas. 7 down, that's it, yeah.
Yeah.
What does it mean?
No idea.
We don't know what it means.
No. I'm not an expert in this. All of these points were put forward and discussed in 18 months ago. This document went out to 4 or 5 experts for revision. It's been on the website and had notes put on it. Whoever put that in had if it's not clear to you guys, then it certainly won't be clear to me. Does anybody have an idea what that might mean?
It might mean that you're going to have more. That's about the fire development being larger than it needs to be, and if you haven't put the appropriate seals within the penetrations of each compartment, you'll get fire spread between all these in inverted commas uncontained areas. So it's like the fire spread through a building where the compartments should have been sealed will be uncontrolled on it. That's what I would. But I think it is very difficult to understand what that means. So you could say risk of the increase of number of uncompartmented areas, perhaps, but it's just, maybe when they were doing this, I wasn't involved in this 18 months ago. When they were doing this, it's just a bit of brainstorming, and all the notes from the brainstorming have been written down, and then
no. I can assure that I understand what you're saying, but absolutely not. No, these have been checked and triple checked by people. Obviously not. It's surprising, given that process, how much has come out that has been missed or like in this case, not clear. So we'll need to check on that one.
Just below that, the risk of compromising security and the thermal efficiency and the acoustics. I don't understand how fire barriers would interact with any of those three comments.
And anybody disagree with that?
I think I might disagree, not through great knowledge on this, but obviously if there's a penetration that's not being fire stopped, it is going to affect the acoustics between one compartment and another as well. You know, we see on properties where they're doing sound tests and all sorts of different tests and thermal efficiency. So although it's not related directly because it's intended to be to stop spread of fire and smoke, it will have an impact on these other issues.
There's crosstalk attenuation, and if you've got a situation where the penetration seals aren't fitted around smoke ventilators or smoke control dampers into builders' work shafts, you can get, you know, a crosstalk going up the shafts. That's
Right.
maybe
Sharon, you got your hand up.
Yeah, I was just agreeing that the majority of the products that we install are multi sort of labelled in terms of acoustic, thermal and fire and smoke. So the acoustics naturally gets included in a lot of the fire stopping elements. So that's the only thing I would say.
Oh, I understand that, yeah.
And thermal efficiency, a lot of the penetrations that pass through are usually insulated. So you've got to ensure that you don't cut away the insulation when you're doing a fire stop, even although that the insulation may be combustible. You have to then adjust the fire stopping measures to take account of that and leave that insulation product in situ.
Okay,
That's
Right,
how I
so
read that.
it is very
that makes
relevant.
sense then. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Right. So we need to check through for duplication. We've got one added in at the bottom, and find out what this risk of number of uncompartmented areas means. Anything else? Okay, Jess, do you want to?
Sorry, I'd still question whether thermal efficiency, acoustic security needs to be in there. Although it's a byproduct, it's an add-on, and it sounds a really good feature of products rather. It's not necessarily on all products. And what we're talking about, what risk do fire penetration, specifically fire penetration seals, mitigate? So the fire penetration seal aren't designed to mitigate those risks, although they may do sometimes. Is it necessary to have them in this list?
Darren.
I would say that the thermal efficiency could actually relate to any cavity barriers going around the window frames. It could actually put in cold spots if you haven't got any sort of insulated cavity barrier there, dependent on where the window's fitted in the wall area. So that's where the thermal part could come in.
It could do. Absolutely right. Yeah, completely agree with that. But is that its design parameter? Is that specifically what we're talking about here, or are we talking about specifically fire penetration seals? So you could argue that they mitigate the risk of you could argue that they mitigate the risk of rodent penetration as well, or insect infestation, damp migration through the building. You know, where do you end on this? Are we talking about fire, or are we talking about a complete compliance system here?
I agree. You could take it out. I think the thermal efficiency just came as a byproduct of the fire stopping solutions being, as I say, affected the thermal and the acoustics. But yeah, for the purposes of that.
Well, I don't know. I remember last time that there was a big thing made of the acoustics. I can't remember all the details, but on a number of meetings, people said about the acoustics, and it's about how it was often missed out, but it was actually relevant. But don't ask me why it was. Does that ring a bell to anyone?
But should the question not say what fire risks do fire penetration seals mitigate, and put these in brackets so that if the question changes, then they can be brought back in? rather than being deleted. They might just be italics at the bottom and saying additional.
Well, it says
benefits or
what
something.
risks of fire penetration seals mitigate,
I
not
think-
what fire risks.
Yeah, no, I think I might recall some conversations in the past about this, and I think if you flip it on its head, if you take an acoustic seal, quite often they need to be fire rated. So
Right.
that's a feature of those, because they normally go between compartments. But a fire penetration seal doesn't necessarily have to be an acoustic barrier.
Okay, so should we do what Sharon suggests and put those two in brackets?
Yeah, that sounds like a good
Yeah,
idea.
and I can check that. We can take that under advisement then. That's it, and green it. Excellent. Okay, cool. Anything else on that one? Okay, just scroll down to question 1B. Okay, what compromises fire penetration's ability to perform as required? So what are the risks to the fire penetration seal itself?
I've sent comments in, Richard, but they're on the installation section, so I don't know if anybody's got something in the first two.
Well, the first one's kind of general, isn't it? Then we've got materials, installation. Scroll down, just let's see what headings we've got. Got installation. Oh, right, that's it. It goes into. So we've got. We'll just have a quick look at the materials and the general ones at the top. Any comments on those or anything missing out on those? I think the first lot are pretty general, aren't they? Anybody want to put anything into those two? Comment on it? If not, we can move down to installation. Okay, scroll down just to installation.
I think Jess has actually, I asked for the Word document for track changes in case I couldn't make this meeting. So I was just asking for the FSDC to be expanded or at least noted somewhere in the document, because it continues through, but it's not clear.
Oh, what, in terms of what it stands for?
Yes.
Oh, right, okay, yeah.
The next one, supports for building services. The sentence, there should be independent supports within 500 mil of fire penetration seals. I felt as if it should be, there generally should be independent support and maybe comma within 500 mil of the fire penetration seals or as tested, because as soon as you put 500 down, somebody will say that doesn't apply to
Right.
There are variations.
So it's the EG we need to amend. So what should that read? Sorry?
There generally should be independent supports, and then.
Right, at the top, so at the beginning, it should read, there should generally be, there should usually be.
Supports for building services are sometimes installed too far from the fire penetration seals, resulting in the fire penetration seals themselves acting as a support. That's a statement, that's fine. There generally should be independent support within 500 mil of the fire penetration seals.
Yeah.
Or is tested, because you want to say there generally should be a support, but you don't want to be specific about the distance because it varies, or change that to there generally should be independent supports.
Right, sorry, have you, is this your change, the EG?
I think, I can't see it just now on the, I think if there is changes, I've put their sorry.
Right, you put that in, right, for example, within, got it, right, I'm with you now,
okay.
Sorry.
Apologies, right. I wasn't saying that, but.
Yeah, no, I thought, I didn't realise this was your note. Okay, yeah.
And the next one down, if any in situ welding is required, just see the last sentence that's on the screen just now. I've added in, so if any in situ welding is required, I've asked them to add at the bottom making them redundant, because explaining that the heat transfers up the pipe doesn't necessarily explain what the problem is with the. And the last one is there is no benchmark, which is the further down again, Jess.
Further down, Jess. Yeah, there is no benchmark. Yeah.
So we've got, well, we had comma, so the door is open for substandard accreditation. And as much as we're talking about building fabric, I thought that should be changed to so there is an opportunity for substandard installation as opposed to a door.
Yes.
Just change the language slightly. And substandard accreditation, but I think that should be installation. So I've changed that.
Yeah.
There is another duplication further down, fire stopping damage by following service, insufficient base material prep, no lintels, so that's one of the later ones. I think that's a duplication as we've mentioned, so maybe just a consolidation of the descriptions. And the sort of fourth last one, fire stopping damage after installation by following services. I think that should probably be expanded to discuss handovers or inspection of areas before closing up for sealants. So that's
sorry, which one are you talking about?
Fourth from the end. Fourth from the bottom, Jess.
Scroll down, Jess.
Fire stopping damage.
Fire stopping damage after installation by follow-on services, handovers, master.
Because it just says fire damage after installation. But I think we have to expand on that to say that there's got to be a hold point. You shouldn't be going and doing a fire compartmentation survey a year after the building's been handed over and then determine that what you're looking at was damaged during the build. There should be hold points, milestones, handovers, inspections before following work can begin, you know, to try and at least capture the majority of the
Sharon, could you put that in the chat for me? That one. Because just will never type all of that. Okay, while Sharon's doing that, is there anybody else who's spotted something that needs to go in there?
I saw one comment about supports being 500 mil, and I think the minute anyone reads a specific dimension, it goes into the head of that's what it is, and some other companies have different.
Yeah, that's what Sharon was talking about. Scroll up there. Scroll up, Jess.
So sorry if I'm repeating. I was typing something else at the same time in the background. Apologies, but I guess it's almost.
Sorry, go on.
It's worth saying within a given distance, but then you could go to the brackets and say company X as an example gives 500, company Y gives 400, and then really make it bold, refer to each manufacturer's install. Because if I was reading this, I'd be like, 500, fine, carry on. I'm working with Rockwell now and something else. I know it's 400 for them. So it really is a case of checking. It's whether or not you put the 500 is the figure, or you put within a specific dimension and it has to be checked, I think, and then give examples in brackets. But I'm not an expert on any of this. I'm more, Paul McSorley invited me just to kind of learn a little bit. So there's probably other people on the call who could give more advice on that.
This is where Sharon's changed it, which we can see on screen. So, for example, within 500 millimeters of penetration seals, refer to each manufacturer's installation guidelines for their requirements.
Yeah.
Just to jump in on that point, I think the wording that Sharon used then was as tested, which I think is a really crucial point that should be in there.
Right, so, where should that be?
So I think whether we could say that it's generally, or let's say typically within 250 to 500 millimeters of the face of the seal, but as tested by the manufacturer. Because as Scott has just referred to, it could be 250, it could be 400. And in fact, you can't even say one manufacturer's 250 and one's 400. It very much depends on the specific service.
Right,
and the
so
specific
before within, Jess, right, typically.
Craig, I think you putting a range just hit the nail bang on the head, because straight away it says there's not one answer.
Yeah, within 250 to 500.
And I think the crucial thing is as tested. Tested by this specific manufacturer.
Let him type that first. Where's ads tested going?
To be honest,
can
I just sorry, from looking at this from a not a manufacturer's or installer's point of view, fire risk assessor's point of view, would it make sense to take out any reference to distance and put to the manufacturer's installation guidelines? Because that's what any sort of project like this should be installed to, the manufacturer's guidelines. And if you put a range in, then they might bring out a project tomorrow that product that falls outside of that range, and they probably will. Just a thought.
I agree. I was going to say I agree. I think the specifications change wildly, and I think you can have if you put sizes in. That's why I was saying really it should be there. Generally, should be independent supported services, as tested by the manufacturer.
So let's take. Should we take the sizes out then? Is that the best thing?
Well, I think that the reason for my comment was just that what happens today if this document is printed, you want it to be usable, for many years in the future. I might go to a project where the seal is supported within 100 mil or within 50 mil, and someone's just said there a fire risk assessor referring back to it. So you want it to be as woolly as possible, but to give guidance so that it can be future proofed.
Right. Okay. So this should read, Jess, take out generally of that sentence. Right. There should be independent support of
services
as per manufacturer's instructions, comma, as per manufacturer's instructions, comma, of fire penetration seals. Does that do it?
Yeah.
And then delete the rest.
Richard, we have a MACE, we have internal standards, and then there's obviously a lot of text, and then the back page we have what we call 10 golden rules. And I kind of think that this is something that, given the amount of people who talked about at this point, it's quite an important one that A, people probably get wrong, and B, people want guidance on. So I don't know if you're going to have any sections in this document that kind of says this is a really important fact or whatever, or put something extra bold, but this is a good one to really spell out to the people.
Right. Well, we certainly can, because we have an appendix. Okay. So what I suggest is for this one, and perhaps you'll all help me with this and contribute to it outside of the meeting, and let's get this right, because I agree with you, it's clearly an important one. Just put in brackets, expand in appendix. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
If it helps, I can drop a link to an article on our website about this topic, because
that would absolutely help.
Others have said it is a very, very important, but it's also a very topical point. So I'll drop a link in there.
Absolutely.
So where you've got the comma, instructions, comma fire, should it be set away from the fire penetration seal or something? The last bit doesn't read right. There should be independent support as per manufacturer instructions, something set away or a set dimension, or don't think after the comma it reads right. Sorry to labour on the point.
There should be independent support as per manufacturer instruction for, not a. Fire penetration seals.
Okay.
Obviously, then you need to take any reference to that 500 mil out of the other bullet points. Like there's 2 bullet points down.
Right. So. Right. So can lead to. Right. Delete the 500 millimeter.
I think that's a separate issue to the service supports, isn't it? That's Sharon's point about if there's any welding carried out, that the heat transfer up the metal pipe or whatever's being welded could activate the fire stop seal. Not sure I fully understand.
Right, so it should,
Yeah,
is this a different prescription than the 500 meters there?
Okay.
Very
yeah,
much so.
the services need to be independently supported, full stop. So that's a subject on its own.
Oh, okay.
Where it's
Apologies.
supported is subject to the manufacturers, and they've obviously got to have the appropriate fixings onto the appropriate substrate. Separate from that, the fire stopping is tested at another, predetermined distance based on the test laboratory that it went to. So you've got the fire stopping manufacturers guidelines, and you've got the services support guidelines. The two don't necessarily match, but you've got to be aware of both of them to install a fire stop, if that makes it clearer.
Right, just for me, make it clear. So where we've just taken the 500 millimeters out on change of location, does that mean it needs to go back in?
No, because you don't want to specify a distance, because
Right,
we're
that's
not
fine.
privy to that.
That's fine. And what about the one above where it says should not be carried out by within 500? That's something different, isn't it?
That's an ASFP technical guidance note in terms of such as just been mentioned, the
Yeah,
welding,
so that's
travelling.
fine. Right, scroll down, Jess. Okay. Anything there? Nothing stands out. Okay, just scroll down. Yeah, let's go to question 2. What information is needed about fire penetration seals to ensure they perform as required? Okay, let's scroll past the green. Just show me what headings we've got on this. Scroll down. Oh, right, it's just a list. Okay, so have a look through the top bit of that list and then we'll scroll down. Anything that stands out there? Scroll down a bit more, Jess.
So can you just scroll up to see the question again? Sorry.
Yeah. What information is needed for fire penetration about fire penetration seals to ensure they perform as required? Sharon, you got your hand up.
Yeah, just the document you're looking at now has been changed slightly from the one that just had submitted as a PDF. As I say, I made a couple of changes. So the item, what has been installed by whom and when, I've put after that the CPVC sprinkler pipe, because there's an issue just now in terms of compatibility of mastics. And a recommendation by the SFP for sprinklers to be steel pipes, different types of plastic. So not all mastics or all products are tested with all types of plastics. And then obviously you've got your thermal impact of steel, copper, etc. So the different types of what has been installed can affect the different solutions available. So I haven't gone into great detail there, but I've just added those like types of plastic, steel, copper and CPVC just to ensure that's drawn out. Okay.
Yeah, just could you put that in green so we know?
I thought it had a track change on it, but I don't think it's worked. But I've got the document I can give to Jess. So
No, it's fine. I can never work those actually. Okay, scroll down. Sharon, did you put sprinklers all effect follow-on work solutions?
Yes.
Right, green that one as well, Jess. Right.
I'll make sure Jess has got a note of what I've changed because it's obviously not worked, just so that you can see.
If you don't mind it, yeah, if you wouldn't mind, it would help. Okay, anybody got anything on that? Just scroll down, Jess.
Just think about doubling up again. You're on the acoustics, and then lower down it says what is it there for? Acoustic, fire integrity, and insulation, or both. You could combine that, but again, catch that as a remove duplication.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, we're going to go through through this with duplication, but yeah. Sometimes you have you're in a meeting with, and somebody will say the same thing but slightly different, and it's got a different implication. But then when it's simplified and written out, it comes out as the same. Okay. Anyone got anything more to add into that one? Ian.
Just a very small point, but I think from the operational point of view, very important. We'll be handed over a fine schedule of fire stopping locations and other data and information, but my practical experience tells me that perhaps anything up to 80% of these will not actually be visible to me now that the building has been finished and handed over. They're behind ceilings and other areas that are not directly accessible. I think it'll sort of spill over this point into the next section on design. And so I'll maybe come back when we go on to the next point on design.
Okay, mate. We'll remember it, and let's see if we've got it there. Is that? Are we all okay on this question now? Is everybody happy with what we've got there? Right. Let's go through to question 3. Oh, there's more. Sorry, there's more here. There we go. Have a look at those. Sharon?
Sorry, Richard, I meant to put on, see the levels of protection, 30, 60, 90, 120.
Yeah.
It really should have integrity and insulation, so like EI after that. So levels of protection have the times 30, 60, 90, 120, and then sort of hyphen E.
Right. So after the numbers, just put a hyphen. No, after the numbers.
So there's two requirements. You can have 30 EI, 60 EI, etc., or 30 I. So you really want to have, if you just leave it just, I'll send you the note over, but if you just put EI at that point, that's integrity and insulation. I can expand that.
Oh, great. Thank you. Right, put just after that EI, put brackets Sharon, so we know. Thanks. Thank you. Right. Anything else on there? Okay, let's scroll down now to question 3. Right, this is about actions. What tasks are required to ensure fire penetration seals are installed, commissioned, inspected, and maintained properly? Sharon?
Sorry, I've got a
No,
note
it's fine.
on-
No,
let's say
you-
I feel as if I'm taking over here. It's only because I had
It's-
time to
you
actually
carry
read all
on.
this. The paragraph that's in brackets underneath it, I don't know how much of this has been shown to someone, but it says it should be given that any work in fire safety critical assets should always be undertaken by competent people, comma, probably third party. In Scottish recommendation, there's a recommendation. Scottish regs, it says recommended. And I think probably considering the whole push for fire safety, I think probably is just a bit too woolly. I think we should, continue that language and change that to recommended.
Right, change probably. Sharon.
Yes, please. Aye.
Yeah,
unless
recommended,
there's no
yes.
reason for that, unless that document or that section hasn't been given out. But I think the language should be consistent.
Yeah, absolutely. No, absolutely. Okay, scroll down a bit. So what tasks are required? What needs to be done? Installation, commissioning, inspection, and what headings have we got here, Jess? Have we got headings? Right, we haven't. Put them back up. There's not many. Scroll back up. Right, so let's just, that's it. Have them all on the page. Yeah. So, Ian.
Yeah, just a point on.
Yeah. Is this your point from before?
Yes, it is.
No, good.
It kind of links in. There's a bit of a disconnect, and it's seen from the operational point of view between, often certainly between the design and the installation in a particular building.
Yeah.
In the past, and hopefully we're moving in the right direction with better education and understanding, but in the past the designer would often, particularly services designers, would pay little attention to fire compartmentation, thinking that was the architect's issue. And equally on site, the installer, M&E engineer, electrical, whatever, they would again pay little regard to fire compartmentation and generally would be designing or installing in the easiest and quickest possible route for them, which would be perhaps a kind of straight line, breaking many more fire compartments than would be perhaps ideal. The move in recent years and under current legislation is towards the designer looking for the most appropriate route for the services, bearing in mind fire compartmentation, and to minimise the number of breaks in these compartments. And hopefully, as an aside to that, where they are breaking them, to make inspection much more readable and accessible. So I think hopefully going forward, we will see strides and much better installations that will allow the inspection of these by the operational team when they take over the site.
Absolutely. Yes, certainly. Well, this is what we're all hoping for anyway, isn't it?
I can't see anything in this section about having a drawing from an architect with the correct specified product, and then the installer having that drawing and assuming they've got the product, they install the same. But if they wanted to change the product, having that process of it having been approved. So a lot of the stuff that's in there is about the person doing the work has done whatever they've done, or the materials are checked, etc. But the actual, have they got the right drawing and the right spec that's on the drawing would be useful.
Right, scroll down, just see what else is on there. Right, scroll up again.
Yeah, that's not referred to in that document at all. So as a passive fire contractor, that's critical. I should have picked that one up. That we need to know what's to go where.
Right, so tell me again.
So I'm a design manager and we're installing XYZ. So I would get my architect to do a drawing and specify it. So he would have spoken to a structural engineer and got the deflection, spoken to a fire engineer, got the wall rating, specified a door, and then he's now specifying the fire stopping product around a door, let's say. So I want the installer to have that drawing.
Got
and
you.
the drawing should say specification XYZ product. And they should be installing XYZ product. If they're installing ABC products, there should be a tech sub process.
Yeah.
So it's just having the information on the drawing.
Absolutely. Could you put that in the chat for me?
I can. I have to leave to go to another meeting, so I will. If I don't get it done within the next few minutes, I'll email it to someone.
That would be brilliant, Scott. If you would, thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you.
I've got to go. Thank you very much, all. Cheers.
Cheers. Thank you.
I definitely support that point, and I think the points here are very focused on the installation, which I understand the question is what tasks are required to ensure the penetration seals is installed, commissioned, inspected and maintained.
Yeah.
But prior to the installation, there has to be good design work. I've used the analogy before, and it's a little bit, I suppose, despising the passive fire penetration seal market, but specialist installers of penetration seals in effect are no different to a decorator. They should be installing the product as it says on the tin in accordance with the tested scope. I think historically there's been a problem with we build the buildings, we let trades come in, run services through, and then we call the fire stopper in. So we call Sharon and her team in and say, put some penetration seals in, give me a certificate, we've got handover next week. But Sharon and her team are only installers of tested systems. So before they can come and install and commission and inspect and maintain, we've got to be facilitating the installation of the products in accordance with that tested scope of application. So I think Scott's point about the design and actually specifying what should be installed, doing that due diligence on what can be installed, making sure that the services are put in the right place, that the apertures are big enough, there's enough access, etc., is actually what facilitates the correct installation and ongoing inspection and maintenance. So
absolutely.
Again, yeah, I'll drop a link into a point on our website about early engagement.
Yeah, do that. Yeah, do that. We are very aware of that. I'll tell you what. I'm trying to think what George, because this has come up that we haven't always included this, and I think George's point on it is that we're very focused on the asset.
Yeah.
It's very granular on the asset. And it's quite interesting because we've got a design working group, but none of them ever come to these. I think there's I don't know if it's an intentional feeling that this is after design, if that makes sense. But I don't know if that's necessarily a good idea. Tom, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, hi Richard. It was, I suppose it's building on what's already been said now. But after that installation has taken place, or that design has taken place, and the installation has happened, I mean, the comment there I can just see at the bottom: check installation of the products. I don't know if we need to be a bit more specific on who should do that, or give some criteria of the right person to do that.
We get into, I'll tell you what, we get into competence on the next right, section. Okay. Yeah, no, but good, perfectly correct. But okay. But it's a big enough section issue to warrant its own section.
Okay.
Has anybody else got anything more on this? Is that all of it just showing? Oh no, there's a little bit at the bottom. Look. No, just don't put that on the document. That's for a note. That's for a note in the chat. Okay. Now just scroll up again. Okay. Anybody else got anything to add into that? What information do we need? Great, Scott. Thanks for putting that in. Okay, scroll down then and we'll go on to question 4. Oh, sorry, carry on doing you. I'll look at those. And Scott's put his point in. Right, what level of competency and training needs to be in place? This will be for installation, inspection and maintenance. Right, scroll down, let's see if we can see all of installation. Sharon.
Hi, there's another element of this that I couldn't contribute. The ASFP have got a competency pathway coming out, and I think that there could be quite a bit of information that would help for this element.
Excellent.
But the person that I need to speak to wasn't able to get me the information in time for this meeting, but I'll send it on to Jess as soon as I have it. So it should be able to help bulk this out.
That's
all right.
Brilliant. Yeah, that's brilliant. Well, that's obviously part of the purpose of this meeting, because you know there's a lot happened in the last 18 months, so we want to keep it as up to date as possible. Yeah, if you can send that through, that'd be great. Okay, have a flick through that. Anything glaringly missing? Scroll down a bit, just have a look at the rest of it. There we go. Karen?
Richard, the service supports are obviously mentioned here, but it might be worthwhile expanding it based on the comments from the previous discussion.
Service supports. Oh,
yeah,
right,
the
at the bottom.
last one. Yeah.
Yeah, so that wants expanding. Right, in what? Give me a clue.
Well, it just said service supports, but I think the conversation we had earlier was around the fact that there's a specific requirement for service supports, and
Yes.
those can affect the installation of fire stopping products. So, you know, I can expand on that.
Yeah, just put in next to service supports, put in brackets in green, expand. Yeah.
Just on that point, Sharon, I guess the responsibility of the service supports normally falls on the M&E contractor, and yet it directly affects the performance of the fire stop seal. So whether it's this bullet point or whether it's something else, whether it's a new one, I'm not sure, but the coordination of the trades, I believe, is critical. I'm not sure whether we've got anything in there specifically. As I say, you tend to leave the fire stopping to the fire stop contractor, but in actual fact, your dry liner, your plumber, your electrician, your sprinkler installer, they directly affect the performance of the overall seal. So I do think there needs to be a competency, whether you go training, but certainly an awareness with all the trades which affect it.
Yeah, I think that there is something about spacings above, but it doesn't go into the detail of the impact where you have one aperture and everyone's decided to use it when it's actually not tested for mixed service penetration. So yeah, that'd be a very good point.
Yeah, do you want to pop that into the chat for me, please? Thanks. Tom.
Yeah, I think it's just sort of reinforcing what Craig and Sharon just said. Like we've had that problem before where there's no ownership on site. I think of different M&E contractors. You know, everyone's working in their own little silo, and it results in problems towards the end of the job when things are trying to be finished off and there's issues. And I think it's going back on that. And I don't know how we sort of pick that out within this, but I think there needs to be a bit more sort of emphasis on that ownership throughout the project, and not just right up until the fire stopping contractors on site.
Yeah. That again comes into what has been said earlier on about the specification of it and in the design process. But that's something that keeps coming up through all of our meetings, that everybody needs to be involved. All of the people further down all the stakeholders further down the supply chain need to be involved 1 or 2 stage earlier than they actually are at the moment. And legislation addresses that to some extent, but possibly not enough.
Yeah.
Sharon?
Yeah, just on that, the sort of competency of other trades. So the 2 things I would say is, one, we've been obviously a follow on from plumbers and electricians, etc., where they've not installed it and been aware of the specifications or the limitations of passive fire measures or tested solutions. So they might do what suits them, but there doesn't seem to be any awareness of the limitations that we have to, or that we are restricted by. And the other thing was, just going back to my comment about the ASFP competency pathway, the plan for the training that they're incorporating other trades. So there will be an awareness module that can actually be taken on by anyone, whether it's the designer at the start, whether it's the electrician, whether it's the plumber, whether it's data cabling, and it's to do with the awareness of the compartmentation and fire in its most basic form, almost like the asbestos awareness. You don't need to be dealing with asbestos, but you still have to get asbestos awareness training. So things like that, with the interface of mixed services and the silos, is the huge, it's a huge problem. And as Craig will know, it's, when we turn up and how can you fix what's left? Whereas that it should really be incorporated in the same way as, where is the door going? It should be what size is the door and who's fire stopping it and what the fire stopping it with, and then signed off, not the door's going in, bring somebody to fix what's left over. So hopefully a lot of these different elements changes will start being seen in the near future.
Yeah, no, that's great that's underway, isn't it? I'm looking forward to seeing that. Okay, anything else that needs adding or subtracting or amending onto this question 4 then on competency? So it was a funny on competency. It's quite interesting. I think that's the first time in any of the meetings going back to the 18 months ago that somebody's actually had something to say that's good news. So it's okay. Now, on maintenance, competency for maintenance. Oh, wait a minute. Just look at the MB at the above maintenance. There's no statutory requirement for fire penetration seals installers to be qualified. This is 18 months ago. Has that changed? Or is it still the case? Sharon?
It hasn't changed. As I say, the Scottish Government have a recommendation, which is the first comment I made about the third-party accreditation, but there's no specifics. And I would also note that if you do have a third-party certified contractor, they still are permitted a ratio. It varies between a 1 and 5, but you can have 1 competent person supervising 5 non-competent operatives. So that it's very woolly at this point, and it's still, I think the SFP competency pathway that I'm talking about, once you see that document, that should be able to have an impact across the board here. but it will only be it will only have an impact on those that are willing to take that step, and that's the only concern.
Sure. Okay, maintenance. No comments on maintenance, nothing to add. Okay, just scroll down. Right, if you just put that green one in.
Yeah. Sorry, just that's the wording for the installation section before the maintenance.
Yeah, that's for that's the installation, Jess. Make that the last bullet point, installation. There we go. Okay. Nobody's got anything on maintenance. Scroll down, Jess. And number 5, how are the changes from one product to another recorded? So basically change management. Scroll down, let's see what we've got already. Now these are generally not specific to fire penetration seals. These are what we've got in this section are general requirements, and where there's a requirement and a suggestion where there isn't. But nothing specific. If there's is there anything specific to fire penetration seals and that would be required in terms of product change? Sharon?
Richard, I think the only thing I would mention is sometimes what it says on the tin, I think will ring a bell to a lot of people. There's products that at first glance may be similar, and at high level, the documents might make the products look the same. But the changing from one product to another, and those responsible for the changes will be critical, because there's a lot of people advertising high level that the product does X, Y, and Z, but when you actually drill down, it's very limited. So it's whether or not people are actually aware of the specifics. And then you've got the compatibility, and you might have a product that suits, but it's only available from certain manufacturers, and you can't interface that with the one that's already on site.
Right.
You've got problems. It's a system. So when you buy Quailfire, you want the Quailfire system. You can't just borrow a Hilti solution and pop it into the Quailfire model. So people that are making adjustments need to understand that when they change a product, it may have an impact on multiple things. Again, the sprinklers, you've got incompatible mastics, and you've got compatible. So there's a huge, so the sort of RFI TQ responsible, that element of it's a huge headache for everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. Paul's busy typing. Paul's usually very vocal in our meetings, but he's now taken to typing for an hour and a half.
I'm deferring to the experts in the room. They're definitely.
I know you are.
Subject matter expert. I've just been doing some stuff on referencing the codes of practice, such as approved documents, the DCLG guides, because that's for existing buildings, and also BS 9999. So I'm going to send the document I produced with some leads in there to Jiz, so you can then disseminate and input into the document as and when you, if you feel you need.
Fantastic. That's
Right.
brilliant, mate. Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, so anyone got anything more they want to say about the document that we've been through? Any comments, suggestions? Now, George touched upon it in his introduction, that we are looking at the information element, which is question 2, in a slightly different way than we were before. And that is, we're drilling down into that information, into that data. We're setting up 3 little groups. One on data, as in for people who are interested in the actual information. One on process, for people who are more interested in the process of getting that information and utilizing it. And then one on application, which is how that information is actually applied in practice or in theory or in an ideal world. So that's the information itself, process or application. Now, if anybody has got any interest in maybe sparing an hour and a half for a meeting on any of those with some like-minded individuals, that would be great. Put your name in the chat with which you would like to get yourself involved in, and we'll get something set up. Well, obviously after these meetings, probably September now, I guess, with the summer. So put your name in the chat if you're interested in digging a bit deeper into data or process or application. And I'll be getting in touch with the people earlier on that we met. I can't remember which bit it was. We said we'd dig a bit deeper into a couple of the areas. So we'll be doing that. Failing that, if no one else has got anything else to say they want to cover, we can actually finish early. Great, Sharon, thank you. Okay, right, so let's call it a day. Hopefully I'll see some of you over the next few days and into next week for the other meetings. Failing that, hopefully we'll see you all soon at a working group or a work stream. We'll be in touch anyway. Okay, thank you very much indeed for your work and your time and for a very good, productive meeting. Take care.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye, Richard.
Bye-bye.